Hey guys, welcome to another battle report. As you can tell, I've done a few different things here, trying to make it a little bit nicer, a little more enjoyable. This is another Universal Battle game, round 3 in a tournament that I've been playing online. And instead of reading across and telling you everything that's been deployed here, I've added some text so you can just see that. So go ahead and just pause the video if you want to see everything that's there. This is Invade, so we're just trying to get across the middle of the board. I've got my Brotherhood list against an Elves list. Played against a very cool opponent. His name is Ben Mitchell. He goes by Ghost Warrior on the forums. Really good player from what I know, and really a top tier list from all the things that I've seen. I played a similar list of Elves a while back against one of his game club buddies, and he tabled me by about the 4th turn, I think. So didn't go into this with a lot of high hopes, but just hoping to learn and to gain some experience from the game, and I enjoy playing against good opponents with good lists. So however, I did have a few handicaps working for me. He was playing in a grand tournament over the weekend, and the only time he had to play was on the Saturday night between the 2-day event, late at night. That was partly because of some restrictions that I had on my schedule as well, but he was cool about it and agreed to play a late night game in the middle of his tournament. So I think he had played 3 or 4 games of Kings of War already that day. I don't think it was the same list. It was some MSU style elf list or something like that. But nonetheless, was looking forward to the game. So here's our deployment. He won the roll for sides and chose top. And then he also won the sides for taking first turn. And of course he took it because he's got shooting and I've got none. Luckily for me though, there wasn't too much that happened in the first round of shooting. He did do a few wounds, but first with the movement, very conservative. He's got flyers and quick moving units, so in order to get invade, he just needs to be across the midline at the end of the game. So no need to rush things. He can sit back and shoot because I've got no real defense against that. I did deploy heavily on the right hand side as I saw him deploying, and I should have mentioned in the previous slide that because he won to pick sides, he chose top and placed his first unit. He placed one of the bolt throwers, and then he used a scrying gem against me and rolled a 6. So in my turn, I had to place 4 units before getting to see anything else. And of course, he placed the other 2 bolt throwers right where I knew they were going to go next to the first one. So effectively, I really had to place 6 units before I got to see much of what he was doing with his deployment. Now, I've seen a list like this work before. I've watched a few other games, and with the Chariots having Pathfinder, I figured they were going to go in a forest somewhere. The right-hand side wasn't probable because they aren't what you want to use to protect a flank, and he wants them in the middle of the table to be able to shoot or charge if need be. So I was guessing he was going to go in the center with the Chariots anyway. So I started to deploy some stuff kind of in the center right, that Green Martyr Horde and the Troop and Redemption Knights. And really, as things were going through deployment, I decided to go heavy on the right. And I did place some flyers on the left, thinking that if he deployed lightly on the left or just ranged units, then maybe I could sweep across and get in his flank. But the way things were unfolding in deployment, I decided to go heavy right and just leave those flyers there. And we'll see what I do with them in the next turn. But what I'm hoping to do here is to just kind of swing the door closed on the right-hand side. He's just got the 1 unit of Stormwind Cavalry, which are not a light unit by any means, but with what I've got over here, I'm hoping I can take them out and then move left. And really, I'm just trying to avoid, even if I can just minimize 1 or 2 rounds of shooting while I get across the table, then that will help me a lot. So I can't use a whole lot of terrain. There's nothing in the center of the table. So I'm using it a little bit from what I have of that forest that's near me. And I'm also hoping that my hunter, who's in the center of the table, kind of hiding underneath the griffins, that he can fly across and start disordering ranged units. I'm looking at the archers and the chariots, if I can start getting into them, or even hop behind and start going after those bolt throwers. So in his first turn, he's pretty conservative, sitting back and shooting. Not a whole lot of movement. He does decide to use his Dragon Lord as bait, but only for my far left Forsaken Regiment. He is not in range of my general, my Exemplar Forsaker, but he is in range of the regiment. So it's bait, but I have a hard time turning down bait, so it was very tempting. But he goes ahead and takes his shooting. His archers with Bane Chant manage a couple of wounds on my Forsaker. He's got defense 6 with armor, so he's only wounding on 5s. And then between his chariots, he moved the chariots up just a bit to get them in range of my green Martyr Horde. Between them and the bolt throwers, he does 7 wounds on the Martyr Horde. But they've got high nerve, and they're fearless, and they've got a little bit of regeneration, so I'm hoping that they'll at least be able to screen the rest of my units for another couple of turns. So here's my first turn. Sorry for getting the rulers in the shot there. I usually try to clean up the tools as I'm doing this. But you can see what I've done here with my flyers. I decided not to take the bait against his Dragon Lord, and I just move all my flyers to the right behind the forest. This is really just something I'm kind of just trying to see if will work. I really want to avoid shooting. I don't have enough on that side to take on a Dragon Lord and a horde of Draken Riders, so I decided to just kind of move over to the right, hide behind the forest, and then take another turn to get in position to charge something. So it's taken up some time, but hopefully it'll save those units so that they can get some flank charges or do some more good later in the game. I didn't really see any point to charging up because I wouldn't accomplish much with them. On the right side, I move everything up pretty aggressively. Martyr hordes both march at the double. The recon troops both move at the double and are screening a little bit. The one in the center of the field is now in range to charge a bolt thrower, and I did that just to create the threat, so he now has to take shots at them in order to avoid the charge, which really just keeps my other units from getting shot this turn. On the right hand side, I'm screening my Abyssal Knights. This is a dangerous move that I've learned is kind of risky to do because several times, maybe more often than not, they end up getting wavered, and that's the worst possible thing for me because now my knights would be stuck behind them. If they're killed outright or if they're fine to act, I 6 one way, half a dozen the other. For me, I don't really care if they die. They've done their job. But I just don't want them in the way anymore. So we'll see if he can manage some shooting there or what he does with his cavalry. But I've also got my Redeemer there. He's giving Inspiring. I did a much better job in this game of leaving Inspiring spread throughout my line. It's something I haven't been doing very well with in previous games. But everything, just about everything on the board has Inspiring. That one recon troop up front is a little bit out of range. But I love the Redemption Knights because they're a unit that gives Inspiring, so I've been liking putting them in the middle of my Martyr Hordes for that reason. So I'm hoping to get some charges next turn, at least one charge. If I don't get into combat by turn 2 with this army, I'm in trouble a little bit. And you can see my Hunter, I moved up pretty aggressively with him. I am outside of the front arc of the chariots and the archers. I'm just within, between them there, but out of sight. But apparently I've played too many games with my Kingdoms of Men and Black Powder weapons with reload, because I just totally spaced the fact that he can move and fire. So the Hunter isn't a horribly expensive character, but he's expensive as chaff, so we'll just have to see what happens with him in the next turn. So sure enough, in his turn 2, he takes the Hunter out. It was a combined shooting from his archers and his Dragon Lord, who he moved over to face the Hunter. The fire breath from the Dragon Lord is 15 shots, and then 20 some shots or something like that from the Archer Horde with Bane Chant. So he didn't really stand a chance there, but oh well, he soaked up some shooting. The Draken Riders moved up aggressively, which I was a little bit surprised by. But I think he saw just how quickly I'm moving across on the right and figured he needed some help over there. And depending on how he moves here, he'll have some flank charges. So I've got to be careful in my turn. But he did that in part because all my flyers are behind the forest and facing to the right, or just completely don't have line of sight because of the terrain. So he felt safe parking them there. Worst case scenario, their flyers, they can pivot and get behind something or back up or do whatever he needs to. So Chariots pretty much stay put, and the Dragon Breath moves over a little bit to take a look. Or actually, I don't even know if he had to move. He barely has line of sight on my recon troop on the right hand side. So continued shooting. The bolt throwers all went at my recon troop that was up in the middle there and was in charge range, but he didn't roll very well, which becomes a theme in this game. He didn't roll very well and only managed, I think, 5 or 6 wounds on them, which is close enough to have a chance of routing them, but doesn't make it really a certainty. So he had to take his chariots and shoot at them as well in order to get them out of the way. I think he would have much preferred to shoot the chariots at my martyr horde and get rid of that screen, but he couldn't risk that troop getting into his bolt throwers so early in the game. So it was great. They soaked up shooting from all 3 bolt throwers and the chariots, which is about all I can hope for a unit like that. That's their job. The right side, I get very lucky here in that the other troop does not get wavered. He does 5 wounds with the Dragon Breath, but the Abyssal Hunt Knights that are behind them are Valiant, so it bumps up their nerve by 1. So I think they were an 11-13 with that. So as a troop, especially as a 100-point nimble, fast troop, that's a pretty decent nerve. So I'm very happy with that result, which means that my Abyssal Knights will be able to get into some action. He moves the Stormwind Cavalry back, which was, there wasn't much he could do about it, but it was a little bit of a mistake because he didn't see that my unit has haste. I had it in big letters. I disclosed it when I deployed them, but again, he's playing in the middle of a tournament late at night. He was just didn't catch it. So not much he could have done about it anyway, but they are within charge range of my Abyssal Hunt, which is awesome. And that's his turn 2. And in my turn 2, I finally get to see some combat. It really needs to happen with my list. I really am loving this list because I think it just fits my playstyle so well. I had a lot of fun with shooting in Kingdoms of Men. It was kind of up and down. High risk, high reward, easy to disorder against an experienced player, but a lot of fun when they hit. But I always tended to be aggressive anyway with my non-shooting units, which would always split my line. This army list that I'm playing with the Brotherhood, I have absolutely no shooting or magic, and it just is working for me. I just really like it because I like playing aggressively like that. So you can see what I've done here in the middle. I move up my Forsaken regiments into the forest. If he decides to charge me with the riders, chariots, or his Dragon Lord, they will be hindered for charging into the terrain. So I'm hoping that'll help me survive if he decides to do that. I also move up my general and face him to the right a little bit. And my thought process was he's actually out of line of sight from both the Dragon Lord and the Drakens. So I had to be very careful how I placed him there. But he is in prime position to get flank or rear charges if he decides to move anything up on my Martyrs, my Forsaken regiments, or even my Redemption Knights. So I'm just trying to cover all areas here and set up traps if he decides to make a move. But I'm also still moving across the board in order to get in charge range. The Martyrs rolled regeneration. He let me roll it twice. He was really cool about it because I had forgotten about it in the first turn. And they're only regeneration 6+, but hey, every little bit helps. And in this case, they regenerated 3 wounds, so that's great. And then the Redemption Knights are just behind them, getting ready to charge. The other Martyr Horde moves up and has to stop at the forest because they're moving at the double. My Redeemer is in the forest, and he's ready to start charging into some war machines, either the Dragon Breath if I need to, or the Bolt Throwers. He's in range of the far right one. My Recon Troop, because they weren't wavered, are able to move up and position to the left, so they're out of the way of the Abyssal Hunt. And then the Abyssal Hunt do the business. They get the charge off on his Stormwind Cavalry, and they're just a great unit. Again, he was not rolling very well this game, and I was rolling, I wouldn't say I was rolling overly well, but I was hitting my rolls. I wasn't rolling poorly, and he was. So in this case, they charged a full regiment of Stormwind Cavalry and routed them in one combat. So that's a great result for me, and I just face to the left, and I'm ready to hunt down some more machines. So in his turn 3, he gets aggressive with some of his units here. You can see in the center, he decides to charge in, but he does a double charge with the Draken Riders and with his Dragon Lord. I think the thought process is here that he wants to be sure to route that unit so he can reposition, probably turn the Draken Riders to the right and face my Knights and my Martyrs, and maybe face the Dragon Lord to the left to face my General and the other Forsaken Regiment. But things, again, the dice rolls just weren't there for him. Things go well for me. He takes a ton of shooting at my General. I think he shot close to everything. I think the Chariots and one Bolt Thrower went at the Martyrs, or maybe 2 Bolt Throwers, and then 1 Bolt Thrower and the Bows went after my General. So his rolls were in general pretty poor this game, but I would say he just did 11 wounds on both the General, which has defense 6, and the Martyr Horde. So 22 wounds of damage in one turn like that. I know it's a shooty army, but that's pretty impressive. But I get very lucky. My Forsaker, Exemplar Forsaker, my General, is only wavered. I think he rolled a 3 or a 4, and he's got a high nerve. He must have rolled a 3 because he's a 15-17, something like that. So it wasn't double ones, but it was close, and he's just wavered, which is great because even if I don't get my Headstrong roll, at least he has to spend more time hitting him in order to get him off the table. The Martyrs take 11 wounds, so they're up to 15, but again, they're just there to screen and soak up a lot of wounds. Hopefully I can regen some and get him into combat. He does make a mistake with his Mage next to the Chariots there. Again, probably just because it's late at night, but the Chariots are outside of range of my Martyrs, but the Mage is just within 10 inches. And that's a really poor placement because if he doesn't waver or rout that Martyr Horde, they can charge the Mage, most certainly kill him, and then advance into the Chariots, who they were actually out of range for if it weren't for the Mage. So that's a really big mistake, and it's going to cost them. And sure enough, the Martyr Horde is fine. They're fearless, so unless he routs them, they can fight on. And so I got lucky with the Forsaken Regiment. The Draken Riders and the Dragon Lord only manage 6 wounds between them. They are hindered from going in the forest, but I still would have expected more wounds, at least a waiver here. So this is a really poor outcome for him. In spite of all the shooting damage that he's done, he's in a pretty bad position at this point. Especially with my Redemption Knights, able to get a side charge on the Draken Riders, and if my General passes his Headstrong, he's going to get a side charge on his Dragon Lord. So, not a great turn for him. He does manage to kill off the Recon Troop that was on the right side with the Dragon Breath. Another round of shooting there, and gets rid of them. So in my turn, this is where it starts to become evident that this game is really going south quick for the Elves. I do a counter charge against the Draken Riders, my Forsaken Regiment, and Redemption Knights into their flank. The Redemption Knights don't really need any help when they get a flank charge like that. So they've got Crushing 1 and Thunder's Charge 2 with 40 attacks on the side, hitting on 3s. So they're able to take out the Draken Riders, and I reposition them to the left. My General does pass his Headstrong test and charges the Dragon Lord, but he's landing just barely in the forest there, so he's hindered. So he only does 3 wounds, but that's fine. At least he's disordered, so he can't use his Dragon Breath and get away and be able to shoot at the same time. So I'm expecting him to countercharge or take on some combat or just get out of dodge. I take my other Forsaken Regiment and I charge them into the bows. I know I'm not going to take them out. At least it's going to take a few turns, but I'm just looking to disorder them so that they can't shoot anymore. And then, like I said in the previous slide, my Martyrs are within range of his Mage. They charge after regenerating a few wounds of their own. They charge the Mage, get rid of him, and then advance into the Chariots. They are going slightly into the forest when they charge the Chariots, so they're hindered, but again, still do 4 wounds, disorder them. They will not have Thunderous Charge or be able to shoot in their turn. And on the right side, it's just completely collapsing. The Abyssal Hunt Knights take out their first Bolt Thrower. My Redeemer single-handedly takes out the Dragon Breath, despite being hindered. And the Martyrs just march up across the middle line, so they will get points for Invade, and just face the rest of the battle. And so in his turn 4, he's trying some, I don't know, desperate measures, I guess you could call it. What he does with his Dragon Lord, I think, is really smart, and I didn't even think of it. But instead of countercharging my general and taking the opportunity to possibly get rid of my general, he charges the Forsaken Regiment, and it's a really smart idea, because what could potentially happen is if he routs them, which isn't that unlikely since they were already pretty wounded, if he routs them, he could advance past them. And if he rolls, probably 50% chance if he rolls 4 or higher, he would advance out of the forest. And what that would do for him is it would get him out of the front arc of my knights, so they couldn't see him or charge him, and it would also get him past the terrain, which my general's on the other side, and he wouldn't be able to see him. So a really smart idea to take out a unit and then still be safe. Whereas if he would have charged my general, even if he took the general out, he'd totally be dead in the following turn with the charges I'd have against him, or at least close to it. Again, though, the dice just aren't with him. He rolls poorly. I think it was really the nerve checks that he rolled poorly on. Everything else was fairly average, or maybe slightly below average. His shooting was good, but it was really the nerve checks. He just botched a lot of the nerve checks. So he manages 3 wounds on them. They're a 12-14 nerve. So he only needs 5 to rout them, and he must have rolled a 3 or 4. So again, just bad luck. And that's unfortunate, because now my general has a rear charge, and my knights are there too. So at any rate, he countercharges with his archers into my other Forsaken Regiment, and does a few wounds there. The Chariots get a win against the Martyrs. They were already pretty heavily wounded, so he doesn't need a whole lot of help there, and they're able to take them out. And that's his turn 4. So one thing that happened in my turn 4 that was another just really unfortunate circumstance for him was that the Chariots, after routing the Green Martyr Horde, backed up, but he only rolled a 1, I think, and that left them just barely within range of my Redemption Knights. And you can see here that even though charging through the forest and being hindered, they were able to take the Chariots out. So it's another unfortunate result for him. Again, the dice weren't with him, but they were certainly with me. I think I rolled a 9 or a 10 on that nerve check. The Forsaken Regiment, the Eagles, charged the Archers again. Again, just a couple of wounds, not much, but keeping them disordered. And then I take a double charge against his Dragon Lord. My general into the rear side, so he's tripling attacks, even though he's hindered. And then the Forsaken Regiment countercharges after they pass their headstrong roll again. On the right side, the Abyssal Hunt take out another Bolt Thrower, and now I'm facing more towards the center, so I can charge the last one or something else if I needed to. And then the other Martyr Horde and Redeemer just moving in. I think this is where he conceded, because really he's got 3 things on the table. 1 Bolt Thrower that, yeah, it can take a shot, but what's it going to do really before it dies next turn? He's got a horde of archers who have been disordered for 2 turns now and are facing down my knights who are about to charge them. And then he's got his Dragon Lord. And what happened with the Dragon Lord was I did 5 wounds combined, which isn't a ton, but it was enough to get his total wounds to 8, and I rolled well on the nerve again, and he's wavered. So with 3 things on the board, 1 bolter that can't do much, a disordered horde of archers facing down knights, and a wavered dragon lord with 2 units on him. I agreed with him at that point that it was looking like it was going to be a tabling, because we still have at least 2 more turns, possibly a third. But I have to leave the decision up to him, because this is, especially a tournament game like this, you never know what can happen, and it's not like I'm going to just assume things and take it away from him. So it was his call, and he decided to go ahead and concede. So I really just was so floored by this game. I really have to chalk a lot of it up to the scheduling. I know it may seem like a weird excuse, but that affects the way you play. He's already played 3 or 4 games. He's been at a tournament all day. He's got more games tomorrow. He's on the road, staying at a hotel or something, and it's late at night for him. That affects the way you play. You have to factor that in. And then on top of that, the dice just weren't there for him. And I know there's nothing he can do about that. But he admitted, or would admit, that he had made a couple of mistakes as well. The one about the mage and leaving him open to my martyr horde, who then advanced into the chariots, that was a pretty big one. But other than that, I don't see a whole lot of problems with anything that he did or the way he played if the dice had been there for him. Whereas for me, I definitely think there's several things I could have done better, but I feel like I played fairly well, and the dice were just with me. So still just really loving this list. When the knights hit, they hit hard, and they're a lot of fun. I just am still needing to improve in how I position and use them. Again, on the right-hand side, if that recon troop had been wavered, they would have been in my way, and then I would have been a sitting duck. There's just several things that need some tweaking, but I keep coming back to the list and thinking, okay, should I add shooting or magic in somewhere? What would I take out? And I just keep looking at it thinking, I just like it the way it is. I'm not winning every game, and I'm still getting beat pretty bad sometimes, but I just have a lot of fun with it. So, very unexpected victory. Great to win my 3rd round in the tournament, and not just a win, but get it tabling, which scores extra points for the tournament. So, and I just got to give this guy high marks. It's one thing to play a game that's close, or to play and win and be a good sport, but to get tabled like this and just be really cool about it. He complimented my army. We chatted about things afterwards. He didn't just rush off. He never complained. He didn't ever blame the dice. I brought it up a few times and just said that it sucked how he was rolling, but he never blamed it. He was just a really good sport about all this. He was a great opponent. And I imagine if we were to do a rematch, things would probably not go well for me. Again, I've played against a list like this before and gotten tabled by turn 4. So that was with my Kingdoms of Men. This is a new list that's fast and hits hard. But I don't know. I'd be interested to do it again. If for no other reason than he was just a great guy and a great opponent, and I would learn a lot from it. So at any rate, thanks for watching. Let me know if you like the format, and if you have any comments, especially on my list or on tactics or anything else about Kings of War. Thanks for watching.